Hey solos, it's Samantha. I have another solo story for you, and I cannot wait for you to hear this one. But before we get into that, hi everyone. Welcome to Disney Solo Magic, the #1 podcast for solo travel to Disney World. In this episode, I got to talk with Lauren, who decided to have a year of Disney to get an out of state annual pass and decided to just do a year of Disney. She went this year during the Festival of the Arts and had such a really wonderful time. And she also told me why people like Figment more than I really kind of understood. So that was such a great connection. She also had questions for me. And even though I thought the questions were going to be like, what type of microphone should you use? She actually had some questions about things like EPCOT that it was fun to answer, although she did get some points where I get kind of angry about. And she also had a really interesting question about EPCOT that hopefully that you can answer as well, because I don't think my answer was that great. And I don't think she was very happy with her answer as well. So anyway, make sure you get to the end and then comment on Spotify or YouTube or even on Instagram about what you think this thing might be. But I'm not going to tell you now. You have to listen. You can go to the description of this episode and get all the links to Lauren's social media. She also has a YouTube channel and she has posted some videos related to her trip. So you'll be able to see it animated, which is cool because those weren't up when we were talking. You can also see the links to all my social media down below, and I am on Instagram and Threads and Facebook, but I am the most active on Instagram. So if you are looking to get in touch with me, sending me a DM through Instagram is the way to go. Before we get into it, I just wanted to say that I am so excited for the programming this March. So there's going to be a really fun episode where I'm going to ask you to help plan my own solo trip to Disney World because I'm going at the end of March and I cannot wait. There's also going to be an episode for Women's History Month and on budgeting, which actually we talked about a little bit in this episode as well. And there's going to be another solo story. So what an awesome March. And then when we begin April, hashtag the second year of Disney Solo Magic, we're going to go right into hearing about my trip to Disney. And I'll just tell you, there is a video that was circulating on social media, and I did post it on my stories, like I reposted it on my stories, of cast members singing the Festival of Fantasy Parade, like regular cast members, not entertainment cast members, singing the Festival of Fantasy Parade song, like in the covered train station because the parade got canceled because of the rain. And I just was like watching these cast members like dance, and I was like, oh my God, take me back. Like, it's just so funny, the things that like trigger this like deep-seated need to travel to Disney. And I can't wait. It's like 1 month. I have some really fun kind of ideas of what to do and kind of what content, but I'm going to need your help in planning some things. So make sure you listen to next week's episode, to be able to kind of learn all about how you can vote on my trip. But don't worry about my trip. Let's talk about Lauren's trip. Again, she was just a delight. It was so wonderful to talk with her. It is just really, really wonderful to connect with so many of you in this community for the podcast. So let's go over to our conversation and talk to Lauren. Lauren, thank you so much for agreeing to speak on the podcast. I know you just celebrated a birthday at Disney and you just came back from Festival of the Arts. And I'm just so excited to talk with you today and hear about your solo story. So, do you want to introduce yourself before we kind of get into your Disney journey?
Okay, I am Lauren, just turned 42,
Mm-hmm.
cat mom to three, and Disney parks goer since before I could walk, I think.
Okay, good to know. Now, you're not based in Florida, though.
I
So,
am American. Yes, I
you
am
are,
an out
yeah.
of state annual pass holder, but I've only had it for this year.
And have you enjoyed having it? Or
I
has
have, my bank account has not.
it? Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, I remember when I made the decision to become like an out of state pass holder, and I was like, no, it makes total sense. And I was very happy about it. And then someone asked me, well, how much does it cost? And then I told them in Canadian dollars. The look on their face suggested something else.
I told someone else, and you're like, well, if you go 10 times, it's like, well, do I normally go 10 times in a year? Well, no. but
But
I would if I had an annual. And here we are. I just, the day after I got back from my last trip, I booked another one.
I love it. I love
Here we
it.
go.
I love it. So tell us about yourself and your Disney journey. And I do want to like flag that you are wearing your Figment ears. You came on this call being very Figment proud and
My shirt.
saying you yes, I know. And you didn't say don't hate on Figment, but you did say why Figment is awesome. And so I appreciate that. So can you like tell us about yourself and your Disney journey and then bring in Figment?
Oh, okay. How long do we have? So, I was born in 83, which is, I believe, either the same year or maybe the year after Epcot opened. And so I've been going to Epcot since almost it opened. Granted, I don't remember most of it because I was so small. But we moved to Castleberry, an Orlando suburb, when I was 3. And some of my earliest memories are from I stole a Goofy toy, didn't know that you couldn't just take a thing and walk out with it. Mom's like, "Where did you get that?" So she had to learn about stealing. So Disney taught me that. And I used to sing the Figment song to keep me from falling asleep at night because I loved Figment and I didn't want to go to sleep. So I took a long break from the parks, but came back really in 2017. And I was there for a friend's wedding in some other town. I can't even remember the name of Clearwater. I was in Clearwater for a wedding. Decided to take a day to go to Universal. That was great. Took another day to go to Magic Kingdom, stayed at the Contemporary for one night only. And the check-in person is like, "Are you sure?" Like, yeah, I don't know what the big deal is. Until I walked under the gate in Magic Kingdom. First time I had seen it since I was 5 and just bawled. I
I
cried
know.
so hard. And that was just like a magical trip. There was a whole Pandora thing. I got to ride Pandora at midnight. Like it was just fantastic. But Figment, loved Figment. And I'm going to make my proposal
Oh,
for why Figment is the mascot for the Farts or FODA or Festival of the Arts, whatever you want to call it.
and not just
Right.
because it's a lazy way to do it. The way I said it in the Festival of the Arts
I
episode.
just like, I mean, Farts also has to do with his ride. It makes sense. But um, Figment was supposed to be the mascot of imagination, right?
Hmm.
He's this cute little figment of your imagination. And what is art and creativity if not the visual audio representation of imagination brought to life? Colorful, vibrant, and that's all that Figment is. He's just joy and maybe some bad smells once in a while, but that's okay. Who isn't, you know? And I love him. It's just
Well,
fun.
I love that. I will now that I know that there's an audience listening, there is a Venn diagram of people loving Figment and who've listened to the podcast that there is that overlap. I will respect respect those listeners and not be perplexed. Although, like I had said in the podcast too, like I don't get the stuff with Stitch. Like, why is there so much Stitch stuff everywhere? And I've gotten messages from people being like, I don't know either. So, so that one I'm going to keep.
Yeah.
The Figment, I will let that go and let everyone enjoy, which is awesome.
I also don't get Stitch. I mean, I do, but he just doesn't tug at my heart. And I have a kitten. Oh, asking for pets right now.
Yeah, I have some kittens around my feet too. It's okay. This is a very cat friendly podcast. I just before I ask you another question, I just want to tell you my stealing story with Disney actually
Yes.
because I was
Disney, if you're listening, we're sorry.
uh,
Or
okay.
are we? I
I
don't
am
know.
not. I'm not sorry because I didn't even think of it as stealing. So around 2017, no, maybe it was earlier than that. I went to Disney with a former partner, and we were in the Mexico Pavilion. And
Mm,
on
mm.
the railing leading up to the exit, but still in that like area where there's all the shopping and stuff, there was a Jacob's ladder. So it wasn't in a merchandise area. It was just on the railing. So I thought it was some kids that they just left. So I picked it up and I took it home and I was like playing with it. And then like my former partner, he made fun of me, but he didn't say anything. And we still talk. And like literally 5 years ago, he's like, you stole that, right? You didn't just pick up something that was lost. You stole it from Disney World. It just was misplaced. And I was like, oh,
Oh.
I did. I did. But oops. I don't
It
know. Like
happens to the best of us.
yeah. So tell me about going to Disney solo. Like you went solo as an adult for that Clearwater wedding, but tell me about your experience going solo now and being an annual pass holder and all that stuff.
So I do a lot of stuff solo, and not just because I'm not married, no kids, I have three cats. Um, I decided, and there's one
Hey,
walking in front of the
there is
screen
a
right
cat that has
now.
entered the chat. Unfortunately, no one will see that but us. But
It's Pippa. Okay. Um, I decided when I was 17 or 18 that if I had to wait for someone in order to do the things that I wanted to do, there's a good chance that I would never get to do the things that I wanted to do. And I wasn't willing to do that. So I started out small. I would go to lunch at Panera, and there's a cat again. I would go to lunch at Panera, and I would go to a movie. And then once that got to be non-scary, I would branch out. Eventually, I ended up I knew one person moving to England,
mm-hmm.
knew one person. Um, it was a work thing, but I ended up not staying with everybody else. It was a conference. I didn't stay with everybody else at the conference. I had a hotel and stuff in Puerto Rico. I've done cruises alone. I've done a Disney cruise alone. It's like I don't want to wait. And I'm an only kid, which probably helps. I like my
Yeah.
own company. And I'm fairly selfish, which I don't think if you're going to travel solo is a bad thing. Like that's the best part about doing it is that you get to do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do, however you want to do it.
I, can
And
I
what better way to go to Disney
Can I
than to
interrupt
do
you
it how you
and like
want?
invite you to reframe selfish? Because I think it's so easy, especially for women, to like call ourselves selfish for just being like, oh no, like I know what I want. So I'm just going to get what I want. But like you don't even like the energy that I feel from you. It doesn't seem like you suck up a lot of space. And that's how I think of selfishness.
I don't know another word for it. Maybe there is in German, but I don't speak German.
All right.
Self-centered to me feels even more egotistical and arrogant than selfish. And I don't know that selfish is bad. Maybe it has a bad connotation, but maybe that's society's problem and not mine.
Fair.
Um, I don't,
You're
you
gonna
can take selfishness
take
to
that word. That's cool. You don't need to
yeah,
I
you can
love it.
take it to the extreme, and I would advise against that. Um, but yeah, I love going by myself. I never get nervous. I
Yeah.
never double question. And I am selfish or within myself enough that when I'm there, I don't care if anybody, I don't even really, unless there's a screaming kid, I don't even really notice the other people.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of in my own little world and I'm just transfixed by everything that's going on around me and the smells and the sounds and the band playing over here. And then I've got a parade that's going to be happening soon. And I get lost in the world in the best way. It's between that and Dragon Smut books, it's the best escapism I can think of.
Is it any like smut fan fiction of Figment?
No, I did not even think about you're not gonna ruin my little Figment. No, he's so cute and
I
innocent.
don't know. I don't know
No,
your connection with Figment.
no. Oh, I am gonna no,
Okay,
no.
no,
Okay.
that's terrible. That was a terrible suggestion, Samantha.
No, this is like fourth wing. This isn't like Figment. I'm so
No, no,
sorry, little
it's a different
Figment.
type
Okay,
of, it's a
different
different
dragon.
different dragon. There's so many different dragons in the world. And
So
some of them are
many.
smutty, and some of them are just wonderful figments of one's imagination.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah. I mean, it's also not like that. It also is true, right? Like it's interesting how a mythical creature like a dragon is interpreted in so many different ways. And I think, like, as you might know, Animal Kingdom was supposed to have like a whole dragon world to really like pick up on mythical creatures, and it would have been really interesting for Disney to
Should.
kind of explore like what it would have looked like for them to have explored that a little bit. And
They
whether it
have
would
a
have
lot of dragons in their IP between Maleficent,
mm,
Pete,
yeah,
Figment. They've got
yeah,
at least three dragons. That could be three amazing rides.
yeah, for sure. I'm just thinking like the Maleficent dragon and the Peat dragon, those are different world dragons.
Different vibes, yeah. Totally different vibes.
So you just went to Disney Solo to celebrate a birthday
I did.
as well as to go to the Festival of the Arts. Can you share some of that wonderful experience? Because I know that there were some surprises for yourself when you were there,
Oh,
like
oh,
changing the
yes. Oh,
schedule, things like that. And
teasing.
so
Oh, yeah.
please share.
So I went, my last trip was in October, and I had a epic bucket list trip planned. And it was ruined 2 days later by Hurricane Milton when
Oh,
I had to flee because it became a category 5.
yeah,
Being from North Carolina, I'm like, I can do a 3.
yeah, yeah.
I
Who
don't
can't?
want to do a 5. And it feels irresponsible to stay when I could leave.
Yeah.
So, all of these things that I was going to do, I was going to do a behind the scenes tour. I was going to eat at Cinderella's castle. I had a Space 220 reservation. Like, all of that got canceled. My Mickey Halloween party canceled, like, all
Oh,
of it.
yeah.
It was the worst. So, I'm like, okay. I went to Disneyland in November so I could do that at Christmas time. Had never been at Christmas. And I decided I'm not going to go to Disney World at Christmas. I've done that, but I haven't actually been, that I remember, for my birthday. I did go when I turned 40,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't actually go on my birthday. I went in April. I did 4 park days and a 3-day cruise, and it was the best gift
Yep.
I probably could have given myself.
Love it.
It was so good. And then, so I'm like, okay, we're gonna go. We being me. I say we.
100%.
I'm
And
gonna
is
go. I'm gonna go.
January your birthday?
January 24th. Yep. So I was actually in my car driving home on my birthday. That doesn't matter. And
It
Disney doesn't actually know nor care when your birthday is. You can celebrate it in November if you want. Who
100%.
who cares? So I went, and every time I go now, especially since I have the annual pass, my quote year of Disney was to hit up all of the EPCOT festivals because I hadn't done them.
Ooh, at all?
Nope, I had inadvertently done the holiday one a few years ago when I went. But I hadn't done Food and Wine, Festival of the Arts. Like I hadn't Flower and Garden, hadn't done them. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna get it. And this is gonna be the year where I do all of the Epcot festivals. And I want to try to stay at different hotels, try to hit as many, if not all of them, that I can. So this time I
Love it.
stayed on my 3 park days. I stayed at All Star Sports
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not going to be in my room on those days. And so
Right?
as a good hotel to leave. And then the first day I
It
stayed at
is.
the
That's one of
Polynesian.
the best things about those hotels. You want to be
They
in the
leave
park.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my first night was at the Polynesian. It
Ooh.
was great. Of course, it's a monorail, it's a deluxe. My last night was at Wilderness Lodge. Again, it was
Ooh.
a deluxe one. It's not on the monorail, but they have the boat. And so I
Love it.
got to experience everything that both of those resorts have to offer. I made a tie-dye Mickey t-shirt for my
Love it.
nephew. I had the best character dining with Snow White.
Yep.
It
That's a great
was
one.
so good.
Yes.
So good. But I also managed to snag some of the bucket list stuff I couldn't do because of October. So on my Epcot day, which I did the Festival of the Arts for the first time, I
Excellent.
also did behind the scenes tour that morning,
Awesome.
which was very fun. And then the next day was my ultimate bucket list because it was a thing that I've been wanting to do since I was 5. I didn't know it existed at the time. The Keys to the Kingdom tour at
Yes.
Magic Kingdom.
Love it.
For a non-spoiler review, it's fantastic for any Magic Kingdom, specifically Magic Kingdom fan. I think you really need to do it. It's going to be different every time. There's going to be stuff on there that you will not get to see otherwise. It's the only way to see this kind of stuff. Um, Slightly spoiler review. If you want to leave this in, if anybody doesn't want to listen, hit fast forward like 15 seconds. You
Yeah.
get to see the utilidors.
Well, I don't think that's a huge spoiler. I think like they advertise it, but did you get to see
Do
anyone
they?
in like yeah, yeah, yeah. But did you get to see anyone in like costume or half costume?
I did.
Yeah.
I got to see a princess who, when they go to their workspace, they are not princesses. They're just people down there. Everybody's just a person. Yes, they might be in a gown, but they're just people. Got to see a princess. It was raining the entire trip and freezing cold during that week,
Oh,
which is not like Florida. So they were doing the rainy cavalcade. So I got to see some of them getting ready for that
cool.
backstage. So you got to see some of those. I got to see Jack, Sparrow
Ooh.
in like half of his outfit.
That's so cool.
So that was super fun. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that tour. I'm surprised on how like kind of inexpensive it is, can all things considered, you know? And I've done it twice. I agree with you 100%. If you're a Magic Kingdom fan and it's in your budget, you should save up for it and try to make sure you go. It is so well worth it. Both times I went, I learned totally new things. It was like a totally different tour. And a lot of like my family were like, oh, like doing the tour, you might feel like it loses the magic and you won't enjoy it as much. And it was totally the opposite for me. I was like, oh, seeing someone in a costume was even more amazing about what they do when they're in costume.
Yeah, we got to ask some questions about some Mickeys. I don't want to give all of the
Yeah,
fun
yeah, yeah,
info
yeah.
away. You will have to take the tour. This is not sponsored. I am not sponsored by Disney.
Oh, then
But
maybe
yes,
yeah,
highly recommend taking the tour. But that day I did not realize, and if you're listening, you should know it is a 5-hour tour.
yeah.
I didn't know that. I had taken a tour when I was at Disneyland. It was Walt's Main Street tour where you get to go into his apartment.
Ooh.
That was like a 2.5 hour tour. I was expecting every tour that I've done has been around the same. Didn't know. So, as a huge Pooh fan, that day I wore an entire Pooh and Piglet outfit. I made a lunch reservation for Crystal Palace, which is
Mm-hmm.
where the Pooh friends are. I ended up having to cancel that and rescheduled it for another day. But at that time, I snagged a 6:50 p.m. reservation for Cinderella's Royal Table. And apparently I told you, like you, I managed to get the table by the window. Granted, it was raining, so there was rain on the window, so I couldn't see it as well. But I'm like trying to record, I'm watching the fireworks while I'm eating my dessert and talking to a princess. Like, does it get
It
better?
literally doesn't get better than that.
Does it get better? And I
Literally.
was alone. I was surrounded by families. I was surrounded by people with kids. Who cares? Nobody treated me any differently. The food wasn't any different. My interactions with the princesses weren't any different than they were with anybody else. I was just blown away that I was up there. I was just beside myself. It was
I'm
wonderful.
I'm so happy for you. So what Lauren is referencing is that we were chatting because the picture of her in the castle is so amazing, and I was like, I've sat at that exact window. In fact, I have been sat at that exact window every single time I have eaten there for like some random
Wow.
coincidence, and I just feel like it has some solo magic in it. So solos, if you have eaten at that window table, you need to let us know because I think it is just designed for solos.
I think so. I managed to tell the lady when I was checking in, I was like, I'm here for my birthday. I had to reschedule this because of a conflict. I got lucky. I snagged this. It's like, it'd be nice if I got a window seat, but I honestly don't care. I just want to be up there.
Yeah.
And then when I go up there, they take me to the table. I'm like, no, no. This is like, I think Tink just dumped a gallon of pixie dust on me that day. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
It's so special. It's so special. I don't know if you heard. So on Christmas, I posted a Christmas episode, and half of it, well, the majority of it was the joyful singers from Epcot. But then I told a little magical story about the fact that I bumped into a woman here in Toronto who used to be a character at Disney, and she
Ooh.
talked about how she was a mouse character, no, a mice character. So I was thinking like the Cinderella's mice, and I was like, okay, well, I guess they don't really do those at Park 1900 anymore because they used to do the Cinderella's mice. And then she showed me her tattoo of Mickey Mouse, and I was like, oh, that's a mouse. Oh, that's a mouse.
Whoa.
So I said to her, like, what do you all think about us adults, especially when we're solo? Like, do you think we're crazy? Do you think it's cringe? Like, what do you think? And she was like,
Ooh, good question.
yeah, because I just let me know some parameters, like social parameters. And she's like, no, actually, a lot of us find it. I mean, other than the creepy people, a lot of us find it really cool because the adults know it's fake, but are choosing to participate as well, which means we're creating some like different imaginative energy that you can play around with more. And so she's like, I've always found it really great. And she said that like the most touching memory she's had has been with adults. And so I was like, okay, great. Well, permission granted.
Now
Where
I feel even better.
really enjoy that because I was thinking about my birthday dinner at Cinderella's Castle too, because it's all princesses. They aren't wearing like a head, right? So, and I'm like, I'm just gonna keep it cool, and I don't want them to feel awkward that I'm by myself. But then it was like, no, these young women were coming up, and they're like, let's participate in this play together, and it was really special. And I'm so glad that that was your experience too for such a special birthday trip.
So about that, okay, one little story. My
Yeah.
favorite princess, I think, is Merida. I just
Mm.
love her energy and her vivacious. I love Merida. And she came up. I didn't know she was going to be there. So
Yeah.
she walked over and she's pointing at my shirt because at the time I was wearing a sweatshirt because I was supposed to be at Pooh. And I had all the Pooh characters. It was just this wild sweatshirt. And she's like, there's a bear on your shirt. And I'm like, but it's not Mordu. Like, it's
Yeah.
okay. You don't have to be afraid. I'm like, oh, you wouldn't be intimidated anyway. She's like, no, no, I wouldn't. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you're my favorite. And her face just lit up. She's like, I am? Like, yes, love Merida.
Love
You're so
it.
cool. It
Love
was
it.
so fun.
When I was at Disney in my 20s and I was there with a former partner, I was getting a picture with Cinderella and I was like, keep it cool, like don't worry, it's just Cinderella. And I had a little like Nokia camera that was orange, and she's like, your camera, it looks like a pumpkin. And I was like, oh my God, you're right, it does. And so like it's just, I mean, I say this all the time in the podcast, like so many people are worried about what to say to the characters, but the characters will lead you to those conversations, right? Like pointing out the bears on your shirt. I love that.
The only time I got a little bit nervous, two times, was with the silent ones, the ones that are in, they have the heads,
Oh,
right? So
interesting.
Figment, I didn't really know what to say. What do you really say? But as soon as I walked up, I was doing a Figment bound, which was my first time doing a Disney bound ever.
Love it.
And so I walked up and he's just like pointing at both
Yeah.
of us. I'm like, yeah, I'm dressed up like you. And he was like so excited. He was giving me heart hands and like so many hugs. And then the other one was at Storybook Dining with Snow White. Dopey walked up. Like, what do you say to Dopey? I have no idea. I think I actually Googled what should I say to Dopey and it didn't come up with anything. And so he's like, hi. He comes up, he sneaks around, takes a picture, walks off. Grumpy, I can do. And I'm like, how are you feeling today?
Yeah.
He's like, you know. And I'm like, I know you've got Dopey to deal with all day. He's like, yes, all day. And he's doing like the circle thing. It's like all day, every day. It never stopped. Like, I know. So then I was able to use that interaction with him. Dopey came back around. I'm like, hey, I spoke to Grumpy earlier, and he had nothing but bad things to say about you. He's like, "Ugh, whatever." I'm like, yeah, you're doing great. Keep
Yeah.
being you. And that interaction actually helped me out with Dopey.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
don't
because
be afraid of like the head characters. They can be little, but they're fun too, and they'll find a way to interact with you.
yes, and like they want you to participate, right? So even if
Hmm.
you have nothing to say, like if you are open to, like if you are showing receptive energy, they will give you something back that you can respond to, right? Like your outfit, for
For
example,
sure.
right? Yeah. So I love that. I love that so much. I'm so glad you had such a great magical trip. And what did you think of Festival of the Arts since it was your first time going?
So, Arts was the final festival that I hadn't done.
Okay.
I also learned that it's the shortest,
Yep.
so I don't know when this is coming out, and I doubt anybody's going to have time to get down there quickly. But out of the four, between arts, flower and garden, food and wine, and holidays, I think art is actually my favorite. I wish the weather
Yeah.
had been better.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it hadn't been 40 degrees and raining and my feet weren't cold all day.
Yeah.
But the food, I'm not a foodie.
Uh-huh.
I don't go to the festivals for the food. I do partake in it, but it's not my big draw. I go mostly for the vibes and like what is the whole thing about. This one is all about vibrancy, color, art. I did a one of the dining packages. So I had lunch at Tep and Ito,
Mm-hmm.
and then at 5:30, I got a front row seat for the Broadway
Yes.
singers
Yeah.
show. I don't really I'm not gonna say I like because I do. I like Wicked and I like stuff, but I've never been to a Broadway show. I don't know if I've ever been maybe to one musical, but they were singing Disney songs and they're singing Frozen and it was great. And Communicore Hall finally has a purpose.
Yeah. Ugh. Dot, dot,
It
dot.
it's not just tables and boringness now. It's full of, yes, there's a little merch area, but it's full of costumes
I love
and
it.
props and interactive places you can stand up. They had the chalk art, which was amazing, the mural you get to paint on. Like it's just I like art, and I feel like anyone that likes Disney, odds are you like Disney's animation. You like their films, you probably like their music. And I feel like anyone that likes Disney would love Festival of the Arts.
Yeah, I love that festival so much. I think it really provides like so much color into months that are known for being gray.
It was
And
so gray.
I
So much rain.
And I think that especially in comparison to Food and Wine, like it's had to try hard to prove itself, and therefore it's been so creative in the type of programming it does. Like it's so for me when I go to Food and Wine, I was like, well, where is the interactive mural? Like where is the like art installation as we walk by? Like where is
Yeah, there is none.
yeah, because I'm expecting that because of Festival of the Arts. So you said that's your favorite festival. What's your second favorite festival?
Wow.
No pressure.
Flower and garden,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah,
I
I know.
love the topiaries.
The Topia and the whole
And the
thing.
weather is decent, especially if you go earlier on. A big
Yeah.
thing for me is the weather.
Yeah.
Before I got my annual pass, I'm like, I am not going to go to Florida during hurricane season, which are the hottest months of the year. It's already miserable where I
Yep.
live. I don't need to insert even worse misery from the Florida heat. I had to last year. I survived. It was still magical. I was just more sweaty than I wanted to be. But this one, granted, it was freezing cold when I went. It's 70 degrees down there right now. It's perfect weather for festivals. Flower and garden early on, perfect weather for festivals. You're out all day, but you're not baking in 90-degree weather with 85% humidity. You can
Yeah.
actually enjoy it.
Yeah. Totally. Totally. So have you gone to any, I guess not the festivals, but have you gone to Disney with others at all? Or do you just experience it solo as an adult?
So Disney World, not yet. Disney World, I've only been, other than when I was a child, I've only been solo. My
I
first trip
kind
to Disneyland, though. Well,
so I
I've been to
kind
Disneyland twice, and
Can I
I've
just
done it.
interrupt you? Sorry,
Oh,
really
yeah, yeah,
quickly,
yeah.
because I really love the idea that your memories of Disneyland, separate from like your childhood baby memories, are all solo memories. I just think there's something really special about that. There's a creator who I interviewed early on in the podcast. Her name is Disney Bound Solo. Well, her actual name is
Yeah,
Laura.
I know her. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And she posted this reel that was like, I go to Disney Solo now to like redo the memories from my narcissistic ex. And it's
I
like,
saw
yeah,
that.
there's so many like healing spaces at Disney, but just to like think about your experience of not doing it with anybody, I just kind of think there's something so special about that.
The only memory I have of Magic Kingdom where it's not just me, I remember riding the ferry
Uh-huh.
with my mom and probably stepdad going, I think we were going to the park because I remember going across it. It felt like we were crossing an ocean, right?
Right.
I was so small. I remember that and the stealing of the Goofy. But that's it. Everything else has been since I've been 34 years old and older. But I go and I still feel like I'm five.
I love it.
I'm
I
just
love
able
it.
to buy wine now.
So I interrupted you. You said you've been to Disneyland
Oh,
twice, and
Disneyland twice. The first time I went was 2019. I stayed at the Grand Californian at that time. My plan was to only stay for 3 days. So believe it or not, I had a club level room and I was going to go all out. I decided though, I was like, well, I think I'm going to downgrade the room and stay in LA. So I downgraded to a normal room, which paid for 4 days in Los Angeles.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, did that. The first day I was solo. I had started dating a guy at the time, and he's like, he works for himself. He was a jeweler. He's like, I work for myself. I could come. Like, really? And he showed up the next day. So
Oh,
for my last two park days, he was there. This trip, I went, and my first day again at Disneyland, I was by myself. I did a tour that morning. It was the holiday tour, which covered both parks. And because I knew I was going to be alone, the other days I was going to have my friend with me that lives out there.
hmm.
I wanted to get in as much done because I didn't want to have to like rush from one ride to the next and want to get this in. I just wanted to hang out with her and do whatever we wanted. So I bought the premiere pass for that one day.
Right.
And I got in 14 rides between two parks, and I did a 2.5 hour tour. And I was exhausted. And that was my first day in LA. So I still had the jet lag. It was a day, let me tell you. Um, and I like going with other people. It's fun. I like going by myself more.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
just do.
Yep. I love it. I love it. So, do you have a tip for someone that would be hesitant then about going by themselves? Like, you're already comfortable doing things by yourself. You already understand Disney as a place that you spend time with yourself. But is there a tip that you'd have for someone that would be nervous about that idea?
The only tip I can come up with is start small. Like I said, when I was 18, I started with lunch.
Yeah.
In our culture, if you're eating lunch alone, going to a movie alone, God forbid, eating dinner at a restaurant by yourself, you are seen or you feel like you're seen as a social pariah. Meanwhile, I'm over here like I'm the single rich aunt and I'm getting my steak, you know? So just
Yeah.
start small. If you're not, I have friends now that are full-grown adults who won't even go to a movie by themselves. I'm like, but you might miss out. Are you willing to miss out? So the more you do the scary thing, the less scary it becomes, and you realize it was just all in your head to begin with.
I
So
love
if you
that. That's a
start micro dosing solo stuff, expand it over time, and you might even start traveling internationally solo. And then Disney solo is nothing. You're just in your own little world having time with purple dragons, and it's amazing.
I
I
love that
will
so
say,
much. Yeah,
I have
please.
one specific tip. Ooh, let me break out my phone. One specific tip for Epcot.
Okay.
If you're going for the festival, there's an app. It is free. The festival app is called
Uh,
Food and Wine.
yep.
And you get to go through and it will update. It's not just for food and wine, it does cover all four of the festivals. And it will list out all of the food. It will tell you the prices, where they are. You can set filters. You can see a map so you can figure out how to get to the booth that you want to go to. And you can rate them. You can see how other people have rated them, if they've left notes. Like this, if you're a foodie specifically, I would definitely do that. And it can help you plan out your day. And even you can even look at this in advance and plan out how much you want to spend if you have a specific budget.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great tip. Thank you so much. I use that app as well. There are some other apps that do it, but I keep going back to Food and Wine. And
It's so
so
good.
I will see if I can get the link. I'm like, how does one link to an app? I'm sure I can figure it out. I don't know, that's what elder millennials eventually do. So if I can, I'll link that in the episode description. And I just want to flag that Matt Richardson, I've done two episodes with him. And the first one, he also said microdose. He also said microdose, like doing things by yourself. And I'm doing an episode that's going to come out, uh, in the spring, and about like how do you get over that soloness. And one of the things is like when you see people eating by themselves or going to the movies by themselves or traveling by themselves, rather than think, "Ooh, that's weird, maybe they're a loser," to be like, "Oh, look how awesome that is." Like to start training your own brain about your perception of how other people might see you, because yeah, it is like rich auntie eating steak. Like I don't need to share it with anyone. And so if you start looking at people like kind of with envy that are doing things by themselves, it allows you to like really start like reframing and appreciating what can happen when you really embrace like hanging out with yourself and traveling with yourself.
Yeah, if I see some lady out, I'm not gonna be like, oh, poor you. What are you doing here? I'm like, she got to choose to come here when she
Yeah,
wanted, how she wanted, wearing what she wanted. She got to order what she wanted. And you can turn it around if you want to do the negative Nancy thing and be like, at Disney World, that guy's got a stroller with two kids. They're screaming.
yeah.
Mom looks like she's having a little mini meltdown, and they have bags and candy falling everywhere, and they can't keep. I don't have that.
I don't have
I
that.
have the freedom of one small little bag and a phone in my pocket and a dream, and I'm
And
living it.
all this merchandise I bought for
So
myself.
much merch. Let me tell you, I am dripping in merch right now.
All right, one last question, and then I think you have some questions for me, which is kind of intriguing. So what is your favorite park? And what is something that you
Now, see.
recommend solos to do, whether it's riding, whether it's a ride, whether it's a food, whether it's an activity?
How could you ask me what is my favorite park? Because the limit does not exist.
I know, I
Um,
know. This doesn't mean
my
you can only go to this park for the rest of your life. It just really just means give somebody a tip to like go and eat and do something
my
and share.
go-to park is going to be Magic Kingdom.
Yeah.
But it just because of the nostalgia, and I think it's so strongly tied for me to the when I went as an adult for the first time, that was the first park that I chose. And it's so close, it's twice the size, but it's so closely tied to Disneyland. I love Disneyland, love it. And for a while that was my favorite park, and it might still be. But now that I'm an annual pass holder, I'm just more comfortable at Disney World, at Magic Kingdom. But my favorite thing to photograph, especially, is Spaceship Earth.
Ooh,
I
yeah.
could just sit there and just stare at it and just be happy.
Do you
Love
like
Spaceship Earth. Thank you, Phoenicians.
do you like the addition of the lights that they did for the 50th anniversary?
That is the best thing about it.
I
Best
agree.
thing about it. And especially I don't remember what it was like during the other festivals, but for the Festival of the Arts, they have two Spaceship Earth programs. And they start at dusk, and every 10, 15 minutes, it plays one, there's a break, it plays the other, there's a break. So the first one is One Little Spark. It's very Figment.
All love that song.
And the colors are lavender and orange, and it's just very swirly and pretty. And then you get a break. And then the next one they play is Rainbow Connection from the
Oh.
Muppets. And there's a rainbow that spirals and swirls around it. And I just stood there watching it. And as a Muppet fan, I'm devastated by the
Hmm.
future Muppets courtyard. I'm going to be there. I'm planning to be there the day, its last day.
Oh,
That's my next trip. That hurts.
yeah.
So that was my trip. My tip is go to Muppet Vision 3D now
Like
before
that
June 8th. You have to. Oh, also, small tip. If you do rock and roller coaster, one, if you're over a certain age, take some ibuprofen probably before, maybe after. And two, don't wear earrings. I lost a Muppet earring on
No,
that ride. Maybe it went to the
no.
Muppet Gods, maybe it was an
It did.
offering.
It did. It was an offering. It was an investment in the new Muppet version of that ride. It
I
was
lost my Kermit Gonzo earring.
oh
Oh.
God. I mean, that's super sad, but it is a tribute. It's going to the right place, you know? That is where
I'm
the money
choosing to agree.
yeah. I know. I remember being on that ride and being like, your glasses aren't going to fall off. Your glasses aren't going to fall off. People's glasses don't fall off. And then I get done in the ride and I'm like, okay, well, they're still on. But after my experience on that ride, I just take my glasses off on fast rides now. And I find that my stress level goes down.
That was my first. I had no interest in writing it. Nothing against Aerosmith, they're just not my band.
Yeah.
So I was just like, never wrote it. I'm like, okay, whatever. It's another roller coaster. It's fun. If it had gotten the Disneyland, okay. If for anyone that's been in Disneyland, it's like the Matterhorn.
Okay.
It's rough. It's
Yeah.
jerky.
Yes.
It's rough.
Yes.
It's even worse than Magic Kingdom Space Mountain. Like it's pretty bad. If they could do like an upgrade, I know they won't. I've had a cast member tell me no, it is strictly a retheme. They've got to fix. I felt like my neck was gonna fall off. Like it was so jerky at the end of it.
Especially because they close it for like 6 months at a time to like clean it up. And it's like, but you could have made it safer for us.
They just need to put WD-40 on the whole
Yeah.
thing and it'll slip inside, it'll be fine.
Lauren, this was such a great conversation. So I think you have questions for me. Do you want to ask me a question?
So I don't, if you're going to leave this in here, if you're going to edit it out for anyone that's listening, she asked me, do you have any questions for me? She meant, do I need a microphone? And I'm like, well, let's make this a double interview. What do
Yeah.
you want to? So I totally
Yeah.
misunderstood her question. So
So
questions.
first, yes,
What
you
did
do need
I
a
put?
microphone. Whatever
Um,
that looks like. Your laptop or your iPad or your phone needs to have
I'm just using my
certain
AirPods. Yeah.
capabilities to record audio.
Okay, oddly enough, as I said, my favorite park is probably Magic Kingdom. I asked you a lot of Epcot questions, right?
You did, yeah.
I did. So what do you think, as a Canadian, of the
Mhm.
Canada Pavilion and their merch?
Okay, so when I was at Epcot a few months ago, I did a Facebook Live ranting about the Canada Pavilion. And then I was like, ooh, this is pretty negative. I'm probably not going to save this. So I guess you didn't see it, which is good because it got very negative. So here's the thing. The Moroccan Pavilion had like the government of Morocco sponsored artisans from Morocco to come to Disney and hand tile all that stuff. And like Morocco, the country was so proud to invest in the Moroccan pavilion at Epcot. Canada
Canada?
Canada, on the other hand, they had talks. Disney and the government of Canada had talks about the World Showcase Pavilion, and Canada was into it until it wasn't, which is interesting because
Huh.
there is like a Mountie character that was part of Disney that like the RCMP, like our Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who had been
Yes.
using. Like there are Disney integrations, and yet the government of Canada, like they just kind of stalled and they this and that. So then I think Disney was like, we have to, we like we have to go forward. So if you're not doing it, we're just going to do it. And so I feel like I feel like what you're seeing is that because the government of Canada dragged its feet for so long, they just had to put something up there. So when you were looking at the Canada Pavilion, for you Americans listening, it is like you are in, it's like the Empire State Building in New York. It's like the Grand Canyon. It's like the Golden Gate Bridge and like a prairie, all within that one area. So all of those things that you are looking at don't actually exist together in any sort of geographic imagination. See,
Can
Lauren,
I
I
say, I learned that when I did the Canada
yeah,
movie thing. I figured that out. I'm like, oh, that building is really far away from other stuff. Okay.
yeah. And
Okay.
so, I mean, Lauren, I didn't think you were expecting the like type of research that I am not saying in this answer, but
No,
that
I
is
love tea. I want all the tea.
but that's what really bothers me. And then that building that you see, the stone building, while I think it was to represent the Parliament building, so like
Hmm.
the White House. Oh, sorry. Empire State Building, the White House, the Grand Canyon, and then the Golden Gate Bridge. That's what it's like. That building doesn't represent the Parliament buildings. It represents the hotel that is next to the
No
Parliament.
way.
So Canada has a series of hotels that were all built around the same time that supported fancy travel on the railway. And I believe that's the Lord Elgin Hotel. And you can stay there to this day. And that's the hotel. That is the building that you're looking at. Hey Solos, it's Samantha from the Editing Bay. Just continuing my rant about the Canada Pavilion at EPCOT. So I said it was the Lord Elgin in the recording, but while the Lord Elgin is a real hotel and it is quite stately and beautiful, etc., the hotel I'm actually referring to is the Fairmont Chateau Laurier. Everything I said about it was correct. It was one of the main, actually the main railway hotels, and it was built in like 1910 and 1912. You can look up this hotel. It's very famous, and you will see that that is what you were looking at when you are looking at the Canada Pavilion in Epcot. Now, if you look up the Canada Pavilion at Epcot, like if you do any research about it, you'll see that they aren't trying to hide that it is the hotel rather than like the Parliament buildings, which would be our version of the White House. However, the fact that there isn't really any information about that leads people to think that it is the Parliament buildings, and I will be eternally grumpy about that. You should let me know in the comments if you want more of these like history deep dive slash rants in future episodes. And when I post the carousel of photos to complement this episode later in the week, I'll make sure to show a picture of the real Chateau Laurier. All right, let's get back to the interview. So you're
So
looking at
Canada is capitalism? Is that what you're saying?
not as much as the United States. That's a different podcast.
Oh, no, you're so right about that.
Yeah, but it is about dragging his feet, apparently. So you're
Man,
looking at Niagara Falls, which is not close to Ottawa, where the Parliament buildings are, but doesn't matter because that's where the hotel is. And then you are the West Coast with the totem poles and um, appropriation of indigenous cultures is like a whole other thing. But that's what's so frustrating about the Canada Pavilion to me. And I wonder when I am in the France Pavilion, for example, if French people think that. But no, I think there's something about the way the Canada government may have like screwed around those conversations that they just had to do something and nobody was going to fact check. There was one other thing I want to say about the Canada Pavilion, the merchandise. The merchandise is boring, but it's kind of typical Canadian, so it doesn't bug me that much. But I did, when I was there ranting about the Canada Pavilion, there was a band playing, and it was from Quebec, which is our one of our mainly French speaking provinces. And the band was very multicultural. And I was really pleased about seeing that because Canada is a very multicultural country. And the fact that there was such a diversity of people up on the stage representing Canada, I at least felt like the programmers today were able to better reflect Canada than the designers 40 years ago. So that's what I have to say about the Canada Pavilion.
I will say it's one of my favorite places to go if I need a break.
Yeah.
If I need somewhere quiet, peaceful, it's beautiful back there. There's running water, there's
Yeah.
flowers.
Yep.
It's a beautiful place to go. So for introverts, for people that are sensory overloaded,
Yep.
the Canada Pavilion is like chef's kiss for a break from everything else.
Totally. Totally. But whereas you could go to France and see buildings very similar to that and Morocco, etc., you aren't going to go anywhere in Canada where the view, everything you're seeing within your eyesight makes sense together.
I
So
can't believe that's a hotel.
It's a hotel. I'll send you a
Yeah,
picture.
it's a hotel.
Yeah, it's a hotel. I don't even know if the
Okay.
designers knew that. It looks like an impressive building. I mean, it is an
It
impressive.
does. I thought it was Parliament.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, definitely not. The hotel next to
Okay.
it.
Great. Great. Um, I'm gonna ask you another one.
Okay.
What's the best? Okay, I can't really think of a smell for Epcot. Magic
Ooh.
Kingdom has the confectionery, and you've got the
Mm.
bromine waters, and you've got all these things. And so I was thinking, like, what is the smell for Epcot? For
Ooh.
me,
Yep.
it is
Yeah.
actually maple. I love walking through the Canada section, and I don't know if it's nuts or popcorn, but that scent that is just in the air, it's either that or the perfume that I ended up buying on this trip from Norway, the snow
Okay.
one.
Yep.
Like, I can't really think of a smell at Epcot except for maybe Spaceship Earth. So, what is the best smell
At Epcot.
for Epcot? Yeah, for you.
That's a really interesting question when I saw that because I can't piece out when I'm trying to think in my brain to pick a smell, it immediately goes to other associations that are not smell related. Right? Like atmospheric, or just kind of memory, like other sensory experiences, but that aren't based in smell. I think that the smell for me of Epcot is that there isn't a smell that you like going around World Showcase.
Mm,
Because to
hmm.
me, for Epcot, like me, Epcot is World Showcase and everything else is just a bonus there, or like a compliment to it. But like the expensive perfume, like the tea in England, the expensive perfume in France, the different spices in Morocco, the smell of soya sauce in Japan, the like the smell of like bubble tea in China. Like those are the smells that I think of. And I also think of Orange Bird, actually, which there's an Orange Bird behind me
Oh.
because there was a pavilion, like a merchandise pavilion that they had in that space where sometimes they do kind of Africa, the continent of Africa stuff. And they were selling merchandise related to the Flower and Garden Festival. And I got a lip balm that was Orange Bird, and
Ooh.
they sold out really quickly. So I think that that is a smell that whenever I use that lip balm, I think immediately of Epcot. But I think it's like all the smells from the different countries that I associate. And then yeah, maybe the fire and Spaceship Earth. And then
Yeah,
maybe
Rome burning. Yeah.
maybe the like idea that there's like an old musty smell underneath that like
The smell of Spaceship Earth, but when you're not around the
yeah.
fires of burning,
Yeah,
that kind of rubbery, antique smell. Yeah. My
yeah. So I
favorite
think
section
that.
is old Epcot. The front part is actually my favorite section.
Oh,
So I
really?
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Living
it.
with the Land and Spaceship Earth. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, it's
classic,
the
classic.
best.
Well, and that like that goes to your like love of Figment too, right? Like that's all
Which
tied
could
together.
be a smell for Epcot. If you know, you know. From the
Yes,
Figment ride, there is a scent.
I don't know, but I trust you.
That is not my scent. I would not recommend that as the scent to represent Epcot. I hope nobody makes a candle out of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I bet we could find one.
Oh, I hope not. I really hope not.
Any other questions?
Hmm. What's your goal with the podcast? Did you have a big goal? Have you met it yet? Is this little insider information?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, I think there's like, I think there's two types of goals, right? Like a business goal versus like a personal goal. So I was so inspired by seeing people do these solo trips on the Facebook group. I talk about that a lot, that I was like, oh, I think that this would be really cool to be able to talk about because there was kind of a gap in the market for podcast stuff. But as I started recording it, I realized like, that there's a lot of people who might feel intimidated with solo travel or kind of like need a buddy to share their love of Disney because it feels like very solo for them. And that I possess a great amount of Disney knowledge that doesn't go anywhere else. And so that personal goal of being able to share that, but also kind of encouraging people to like live their best life by doing those solo trips, and also like connecting with people like yourself who do love to go to Disney solo, and like having a platform to share those stories. Those are all like my personal goals. And that's why I've talked a lot about how April is kind of the, are we going to do a second year or not? Because I feel like I've met all those goals. And so like how do we continue those goals? Like which version? And I think about AJ from the Disney food blog, who's now all ears, and the empire that she created. And I think a lot about how she would have had to replicate content a lot because you were always meeting people who are discovering some of these things for the first time. And so it's like, what's that balance between replicating content, but also meeting people's needs where they are? So I'm kind of still on the fence with it. I'm closer to doing it, like continuing, than I am with not continuing. So that's pretty exciting. In terms of business goals, like it doesn't like make money. It doesn't make money. I think it would be really cool to be able to have a podcast that sponsored elements of me traveling there that I can share on the podcast, right? Like I've never been to a deluxe resort. And so if there was some sort of long-term revenue that allowed me to do that so I could talk about it, I think that would be cool. Or to be able to like do some sort of meetup and like have that as, right. So it's not, I mean, it's not as much to make money as to be able to, if you're going to continue the podcast, be able to go beyond what I can do just on my own. So that's kind of where I am with that. But so far, it's been really fun to do. And I've talked a few times about doing other video series, and we also made it a podcast for my professional academic work. And that was always so much harder because in academic spaces, like with professors and historians, people don't want to like give a lot. There's always jockeying for who's the expert. So even if I'm create a platform for others to talk about their expertise, it's hard for other people to like lean into enjoying that. And so the pleasure in this, and in a way, this has been kind of healing from some of that experience, is that people want to hear from you and enjoy that. There isn't the same kind of jockeying of space and expertise. I mean, I'm sure there are creators that feel that, but that's not, I don't live in that world. I live in like just my little podcast world. So that's been really good too. So those are my goals, I think, for the podcast. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
hope. I like even, as you were saying, Disney at home. Even when I'm not at Disney, I still listen to your podcast, even though I've been several times. I still listen, even the little
And thank
refresher
you
video
so much for
podcast you
listening.
did not long ago. I listen.
Yeah. I mean, it's so cool to, it's like
I
feeling
learned from
good to
you
be
about the
helping.
button. You can get a special button. You can get that's your
Yeah.
birthday with the gold and get. I learned
Did
stuff
you
from
get a
you
birthday button?
today. I got a birthday button.
Yay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so special. Like that's the thing. There's so much information, and yeah, there's so much information about making the trip the best possible. And it's so like I had a friend who's a vegetarian, and she went with her husband, and she's like, the food was terrible. All we could eat were French fries. And I was like, girl, no. So it's hard to know what the audience is, or people like that who like don't know what they don't know, or people who are annual pass holders who go all the time that again just kind of, so it's interesting, but it's been fun, and it's been great to do the solo stories.
One final one.
Yes.
Now you are the out of state pass holder, like top level, because you are out of country pass holder.
Yes, yes.
So, do you have any tips? Like, what are things that you've done financially to be able to come back and forth as often? Any tips you might have for me who goes there all the time and maybe doesn't want my bank account to hurt so much?
Well, the first tip I'd give you is that your bank account doesn't have feelings, so don't worry about it.
Tell that to my tax attorney. Kai.
I know
Tell that to my 401k.
I know my financial advisor last year, she was like, a podcast, huh? And I was like, yep. So the trips are write-offs. And she's like, all right. Well, it's interesting that you ask about that because there's going to be an episode coming up that's all about. Okay, the idea of the podcast was supposed to be budget saving tips, but I realized by the end of it that it was really just like about stretching your dollar. And I think that I don't know if it's just to rationalize my own spending, but I think that is actually a better way to go into a Disney vacation because I think that if you go in just being like save money, save money, save money, that you'll feel constrained and then won't be able to really have that joy. Or maybe that's my own relationship with money. So it's like I would recommend staying at All Star Sports, which is the cheapest value resort, over staying off property because I don't think you get the same experience. And if you're going to spend that money, stay in the bubble. So wait for that episode because there's going to be more examples like that of just being like, but another way you could spend money but make it go further could be. Da, da, da.
No, yes, that I will say, having an annual pass, you get discounts
Yeah.
on food, on merch. Because I'm going again in June, I get up to 40% off one of the resorts. So I'm staying at another resort, Caribbean Beach. I've never been there before.
Ooh, it's one of my favorites.
So, like having the annual pass, yes, it encourages you to go because you're going to be going, you're going to be spending, but it does save you a bit of money.
Well, what's been interesting about the like merchandise discount for me with the annual pass is that because being a Canadian, there's the exchange, and sometimes that can be kind of hefty. And so when I look at the price of something, because this is so this is not embarrassing, but this is just like
Real
so
life.
sad because it's really just going to be about shopping. When I see the price on something, I think to myself, that's the Canadian price. So now I can determine whether or not it's worth it if that's the Canadian price versus looking at something
Mm-hmm.
and thinking, oh, it's going to be even more money. I wonder what that's going to be, blah, 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 blah. So it makes the like conversion math a little bit easier for my brain.
Whatever works. Disney
Yeah,
math.
yeah,
Make it work.
I know Disney math. Lauren, this was amazing. It was so wonderful to talk with you. Thanks for asking me
Thank
questions
you.
too. It was fun. And how can people like follow your Disney adventures? How can people get in touch with you if they're interested in like seeing those beautiful pictures from your last trip?
I do. Yep. One of my hobbies, part of the year of Disney, is to take pictures and to try to get better at it, make that like a hobby.
I
So I
love it.
do take photos every time I go. I have a huge folder of photos now. So on Instagram, that's usually where I post the photos. That is Disney.daze, D-A-Z-E or Z-E
Thank you.
dot 55. I have the same handle on Threads where I will post stuff, and sometimes the photos make it over there, sometimes they don't. I do have a YouTube channel where I have like some ride POV videos that I'm going to be posting. Eventually, I'd like to post videos to help people like plan their own trips. That's
Love
also
it.
part of why I'm doing all the hotels. So I can be like, this is what this one's like. This is what this one's like. I've used trip planners in the past, but I kind of like to do it myself.
Yeah.
Maybe that's another part of my individual soloness. I'm like, I'll just plan it myself. So,
Yeah.
but Disney can be intimidating. But
Yeah. And
yeah,
sometimes trip planners don't no. Like I had a friend, she's a senior woman who went to Disney for the first time for her 65th birthday, and her travel planner like got her reservations for like Dinosaur in Disney Springs and Rainforest Cafe and Animal Kingdom, which are really cool experiences, but like they're not Disney experiences. And I was like, oh, you should talk to me.
yeah.
Yeah, so it's good to do some research. Well, don't worry, Lauren. All the links to all those things are going to be in the description below this episode so people can find you really easily. And when you get those videos up, let me know and I'll make sure to promote them. And yeah, it was just wonderful to talk with you. Thank you so
It
much for agreeing to do
was.
this and happy birthday. Happy belated
Thank you.
birthday. All
I
right,
love
well,
it.
until next time.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey Solos, it's Samantha. I hope you liked this episode and all the episodes of Disney Solo Magic, the number one and I think only podcast for solo travel to Disney World. Help me make this podcast even bigger. Please make sure you rate, review, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube. You can do all three. That's really great. It's also really, really great to connect with you, and you can connect with me on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. Instagram is the best way to get in touch with me. And if you want to support the podcast even more, and keep it ad-free, you can buy me a coffee. You can go to buymeacoffee.com/Disney_solo_magic. And for the low price of $3 American, which is about $5 Canadian, and it's hard to even find a coffee at that price these days, you can support me and the podcast and help keep me caffeinated for a week ahead of content creation and editing. Thank you all so much for listening. It is just wonderful to build this community, and I can't wait to create more content for you. Bye.